Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who's also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Capital Markets, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Wang, and I believe Mr. Michel, you may be right that the Fed should only buy U.S. government paper rather than picking winners and losers in the economy. But I would argue that it shouldn't just be short-term paper. There are times when we have to drive down long-term interest rates, which I think are more significant for those making investments in housing and in factories, especially factories. And Mr. Michel, I got to strongly disagree with you on deflation, even gentle deflation, being a good thing. And if we're going to design things so that we may have gentle deflation, then we would have to realize that sometimes we would have ungentle inflation. You don't always get it right. I want to bring to the attention of this task force that a few hours ago, the SEC sent an email to its staff offering $50,000 to every staff member who will resign. Those resignations are required by March 21. They're available to the top 60%. This is no way to run an agency. It means you lose the best people, the ones who can, between now and March 21, line up a job on the outside. It means you have no control over which parts of your agency get smaller and which stay the same size. Your support personnel to line personnel gets radically changed because none of these buyouts were available to the bottom 40%. But most importantly, I oppose defunding the police, whether it's crime in the streets or crime in the suites. And when we offer $50,000 to every cop to quit, we get more crime in the streets. And I'll point out, this is all courtesy of Elon Musk, a man who has been investigated time and again for violating our securities laws, seems to have violated them even more on the issue of Dogecoin, and letting Al Capone set the size of the Chicago Police Department strikes me as a very bad idea. Let's talk about independence. Mr. Kozel, we have an independent Fed. Some countries don't. Turkey comes to mind as places where there is intense pressure. Has that worked out well for other countries to let politicians or even dictators tell their central bank what to do?
I would say no.
Couldn't agree with you more. Project 2025 has some ideas that are interesting, such as I said, limiting which kinds of bonds the Fed would buy and limiting the lender of last resort function. When we were crafting Dodd-Frank, I was a strong voice for trying to hem in the right of the Fed to bail out private entities. But the key thing that's being talked about is the dual mandate. Mr. Kozel, if we didn't have a dual mandate, so we told the Fed, don't care about unemployment, would we get more unemployment?
I believe so. I believe we probably would have caused an unnecessary recession to bring down the inflation that came down anyway. I think a lot of people at the margins of our labor force would be left behind under that kind of regime.
I'd like to focus on tariffs, but particularly their effect on housing. We need millions of new housing units built in this country. We now need to replace all the housing units in the Palisades and most of them in Altadena. The John Burns Research and Consulting folks say that the proposed White House tariffs will raise the cost of building structures in this country by 5%. Is that good for people who are looking to own a home?
No, I believe the cost of housing is already too high because of many things, including regulations, and I think the tariff regulation would be quite bad for housing.
And if another thing a little off to the side of the Fed, but part of 2025 is to, quote, privatize Fannie and Freddie. We had them privatized once where the taxpayers took all the risk and the private shareholders were supposed to make the profit. Should we go back to that, Mr. Kozel?
No, I think the old system was quite broken, and any system of the conservatorship would have to be done carefully and accountable.
And if we just didn't have Fannie and Freddie, Could we give 30-year mortgages with 10% or 5% down payments to ordinary Americans?
No, I believe mortgage rates would be quite higher, even higher than they already are under Trump.
I yield back.
Gentlemen,